So today I'm going to show you how you can absolutely flush those mid to long irons, and towards the end of the video we're going to be using TrackMan to show you the difference between a hybrid and a long iron, and it might help you decide which one is better for your game. So the mid to long irons often give golfers difficulties, and you may be one of those golfers who just really struggles when you get past maybe a 7-iron, maybe a 6-iron, and when you use those long irons you don't really get the most out of them. They don't go as far as you would believe they should, and they just hold you back from shooting some better scores. Well, we're going to go through exactly how you hit these clubs better, what you need to do in your setup and your swing, and we're also going to cover the difference between a long iron and a hybrid and explain what they do differently out on the golf course. We've got TrackMan here, and then the differences between those two clubs will really kind of help us understand why golfers will struggle with these golf clubs that I've got in my hand here. So let's start off by discussing how we actually use that long iron. But before I do that, I'd love you to drop into the comments box and just let me know, what is the longest iron that you carry? And are you potentially in the process of thinking about changing that for a hybrid, or do you struggle with those long irons? It'd be really useful to have that information, so drop into the comments now and let me know what the longest iron is that you carry. So before we go through the swing and setup, we kind of need to understand how the golf club is used and which parts of the golf club are really useful to us. The middle of the golf club, or the part of the golf club I'd like to use, is actually a lot higher up than many people would assume. It's going to be certainly, avoiding the bottom groove and the bottom two grooves. And we need that ball to be coming from much higher in the golf club than, I say, people often assume. Now, how we actually get that to happen and how we use the correct part of the golf club, especially when the ball is on the ground, is we have to have some amount of forward lean of the golf club. The more that golf club leans back, the more I expose the bottom of the golf club, and the ball will tend to strike too low in the club face. So we need that handle to be somewhere ahead of the golf ball at impact. Now, if I want that to be the case, I really need to have my hips forward of where they were at setup. So the difference between where my hips are at setup and where my hips are at impact is going to be quite different. There's going to be more lateral movement. That means there's going to be weight on my lead side. I also really want to feel like, to help my handle get forwards, that I am rotating my body through the shot. The more that I can rotate, the more that allows me to have my handle forward. So those are the things that really need to be there, but they're often not in many golfers. And as we use TrackMan a bit later, we'll see why that's the case. So if I take my setup with my 4-iron, you'll notice just where I've got that golf ball positioned. It's forward of centre, but not a huge amount. It's certainly not up by where I would play driver or 3-wood. It's still going to be, sort of close to the middle, but certainly favouring that lead side. Now, even though I've got a long iron, it's got low loft, I'm going to start with about 55% of my weight on my lead side. And this is where often golfers really struggle, because they don't hit them particularly high or particularly well, and the clubs have got low loft. They tend to often have the ball too far forward, and in some cases they will even have a little bit too much weight on that trail side, because ball forward, weight back sort of gives that sensation, that feeling of I might be able to get this ball up into the air nicely and have that shot that I desire. Unfortunately, what those things do is make it very difficult to get the handle forwards, and we've said that's really important. And they also make it very difficult to have the lowest part of the swing after the golf ball, and that's absolutely essential. So at setup, what might feel a little bit more comfortable actually encourages those poor strikes and those poor shots. So the setup is really important. Ball is just forward, weight is a little forward. Now, my concept here is going to be that I need to strike the ground after the golf ball. My lowest part needs to be target side of the ball. I need to have a downward strike on this golf ball. As a rule, any ball which is on the ground, the club has to be traveling downwards. That means the low point is after the golf ball. So once we've got ourselves set up and we have the handle a little bit forward of the club head at address, I need to ensure that during my backswing I'm staying very centered over the golf ball. I'm allowing myself to shift forward, as we've already said, and I'm actually trying to strike the ground after the golf ball. All of these things are difficult when your subconscious is telling you you've got a golf club with very little loft and a golf club which you potentially don't hit particularly well a lot of the time. So the real kind of honest truth here is, in terms of the swing, there's not a huge amount of difference between what you might do with an 8 iron, a 7 iron and a 5 iron or a 4 iron. We just have to trust the loft that's on the golf club. So let's go ahead and hit this one with a 4 iron. Weight is to the left, ball is just for the centre, and I'm going to really commit to this and hit just after the golf ball. Okay, and that's leaked a little bit right, but the flight was great, the strike was great, and the fact that it's gone a little bit right is down to me as the golfer, not so much the golf club itself. Strike was after the ball, flight was good, everything was what I wanted to do on that because my concepts were clear, my setup was good, and my intent was important. Let's go ahead and use TrackMan to look at some of the differences between the hybrid and the long iron. Okay, so we've got TrackMan set up here, and I'm just looking at a bit of data, looking at club speed, carry, ball speed, attack angle. And the important things we're looking at here would be the height that the ball goes, so we call that peak height, and also the land angle, so the angle which the ball comes down at. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit my 4 iron, and I'm going to just make my normal golf swing similar to the one that I've just done, and we're going to get some data from TrackMan on that golf ball. Okay, felt pretty good. And you can see the data that's on the screen there. You can see that I hit down the golf ball, which is what I want, by nearly 4 degrees. The ball only took off at 12.5 degrees. That's relatively low, considering this golf club's got 22 degrees of loft. And the height was 97.4, so we'll call that 100 feet high just for argument's sake. So carry 222, pretty good shot. I was happy with that. The flight was nice, and although you can't see the ball flight, it looked exactly as I would expect it to look. Now the key thing here would be that first number, that club speed, 102.7 miles an hour. Many of you will not have a club speed such as that. You'll have a much lower club speed. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit my 4 iron, and I'm going to try and reduce my club speed down to, let's go somewhere around about the 80 mark. So that would be, 20 odd mile an hour slower than what I normally swing at. But I'm going to try and keep everything else the same. So same setup. I'm going to go ahead and try and make this much slower swing. Okay. Really nice shot, actually. You probably saw quite a bit of that ball flight there. But what we're going to see here from the TrackMan is, okay, 85.8, so I wasn't that close to 80, but a little bit higher. But just look at the attack angle, minus 3.9, very similar to what it was on that first shot. Launch angle actually slightly higher at 13.3. Look at the height, 46.5. The one was 97 previously, so that was half as high. Why was it half as high? Well, really, it was to do with that number there that you see, which is the ball speed. That ball speed is 115. I think previously it was 140 something. So if you can imagine that 2 golf balls take off at the same angle, but one's got significantly lower speed, it's very simply going to drop out the sky much sooner. So one of the really important factors when we're looking at how high a ball goes is how much speed did the ball have. Very simply, the more speed that the golf ball has got, the higher it will go, because it will continue to rise for longer. So if this is me and I swing at 85.8, that ball flight is far too low. That's not much use. Look at the land angle, 26 degrees. If that ball lands on the green, it's going to shoot right over the back. And if I need to get my ball onto this green, I have to land it a long way short, and very often there's hazards there, and there's trouble, and there's mounds and streams and bunkers. So for me, that's not a particularly useful golf shot on the course. Yet everything was good. My setup was good. My delivery was good, I struck it well, everything was good, but that ball flight isn't much use. So when I have a shot such as that, and the ball flight isn't much use, what do we start to do? Well, we start to think about, what can I do to make the ball go higher? Now we know, we've just said that, we want the ball to go higher through more speed, but we can't really do that because we're limited as to what we can do. So those golfers start to push the ball a little forward because we need it to go higher. They potentially start to lean a little bit back. We want the ball to go higher. They often don't shift their weight forward. They often leave their weight on their back leg. And all of these things that they're doing makes sense. We want that ball to go higher. So what can we do? We lean back, we push the ball forward, we almost scoop the ball into the air. And that really massively compromises your strike, your consistency, where you're able to hit the golf ball on the club face. It changes your low point, your attack angle, all of those things. And suddenly, we can't hit those irons. We can't hit the 4 iron, we can't hit the 5 iron because our technique is not good enough. But when we have the correct technique, we don't really get the ball flight that we want. So that's when these come in. This is a 4 hybrid. This has got 22 degrees of loft, exactly the same loft as what was on my 4 iron. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit a 4 hybrid, and I'm going to try and create the same speed. I think it was about 86 before. So I'm going to try and create the same speed that I did with that 4 iron, about 80, 85. Okay, how close did I get? 86.1, so pretty similar. I was going for 85. So 86.1. Attack angle there, -4. Very similar, so I still struck down on the golf ball. But look at the launch angle, 15 degrees, and I think it was 13 point something. So the launch was much higher. The height was over 10 feet higher, and the land angle was much steeper. So what I've effectively done there is I've used the same technique as I did with that 4 iron, but the golf club I was using, being a hybrid, helped me increase the launch, increase the peak height, and steepen the drop angle. Now that ball flight, much more usable on a golf course. It's much higher, it stays in the air for longer, it drops a little softer, I can land that on the green. And the really key thing here is the ball flight is better, yes, but it's the fact that that ball flight means that I am not going to have the sensation that I need to lean back and lift the golf ball, because the ball flight's high enough anyway. That ball flight looks good, it's pleasing to my eye. And that's really important, because if the ball flight doesn't look like you want it to look, you're going to start adjusting your technique to try and achieve that. And that's where we start to get really unstuck and we struggle with those long irons. So with that 4 hybrid, I set myself up exactly as I did with the iron. Ball just forward, slightly more weight here, had that sensation of striking the ground after the ball. That's the technique I want. But the club that I had helped me. It encouraged the ball to go higher, which is what my mind wants to see. And that's really, really important. So the difference between a long iron and a hybrid is very simply kind of where the weight is relative to the hitting surface, the face of the golf club. With a hybrid, the weight is very often pulled back away from the face and it's pulled down low in the golf club. Those things make the ball go higher, and that's why they are so popular. So the message really here would be, if you are using long irons, we've gone through exactly how you need to set yourself up and how you need to use them. But if you've got a swing speed which is around that 80, 85, maybe in the 70s, you are going to struggle with long irons. It's just factually correct that you are going to struggle with them, because if you have the correct technique, they're going to be quite low and quite flat. And if you try and get them up in the air, we're going to sacrifice the technique and the strike. That's when we really need to look at these hybrids, and we really need to start to consider swapping out the long irons for those hybrids, because they are much easier to use. And hopefully in this video we've given you a little bit of an idea about why that's the case, and the difference that you can get in the ball flights basically just from swapping out a 22 degree lofted club and adding in another 22 degree lofted club. But it's the design that's really important. So if you've been considering swapping out a long iron for a hybrid, I would highly recommend it. If you are a golfer who has a slightly slower swing speed, this is going to make the game so much easier for you. Hope that video is helpful. I hope there's some information there which is of value to you and something which can help you make some better decisions, maybe when you're considering changing your equipment. Thanks for watching. Usual stuff is down below. The comments box is down there. The like button is down there as well. And if you're not a subscriber, I'd love you to click that button and be part of the community. It is absolutely free, and I would love you to be here for another video again soon. Thanks for watching.